If this works, then I will join through computer. Otherwise, I will not able to take the class. My computer now. So I can only be connected to my phone. I can't share in PPT, of course. So what I should do? Hello, any suggestion? So just hold on some time. If it works, then I will be connected to the computer. So okay, in the meantime, let me check your memory. Am I audible? Okay, good. So let me check your memory. I told you there are two methods of constructing the network diagrams. Can you just give some hint of the two methods? Anyone? No. I told you there are two approaches to construct the network, and we have to be very careful because they use different sign conventions, and sometimes they create some kind of problem if you mix them up. So what are those two methods? Can anyone remember? No. How many students are there? 35. Okay, let me tell you, and you remember this time. The two methods are known as activity on arc, that is AOA, and activity on node, AON, right? So in activity on arc method, we are representing an arrow as an activity, right? In the network diagram, we are going to use nodes and arrows, just like in graph, something about graph theory. So there will be nodes and there will be arrows or arcs. So those arrows will represent activities in the former case, and in the latter case, that is activity on node, will represent the activities on a node, right? The node is represented by a circle or by a square or rectangle. So these are the two methods of constructing network diagram. Both are useful, and also I told you which approach is used by software. I also told you this thing. Can anyone tell me? Hello. Which method is adopted by software? People are not remembering these things. Can you hear my question? Okay. So which method is adopted by software? I told you. Can anyone tell me out of these two? Okay, it is activity on node that is used by software. So you'll find all the software which are used for project scheduling purpose, like Microsoft Project is the popular one. So they make use of the method which is activity on node. Right? But activity on arc or activity on arrow, both are same, AOA. Either activity on arc or activity on arrow. So this approach is also useful, and most of the textbooks and the reference books will find that this method is being used. Right? So we'll discuss both the methods, but we'll try our best to separate their discussion so that you not mix up, because there is some difference in their computation and sign conventions. Okay. So I think let me try through this system now. All right, now I get connected. Okay. Let me share the slide. Can you see the slide? Can you see the slide? It's an audio problem. Please confirm. Can you see the slide? A lot of problems. Okay, you have texted. Thank you, Ron. Thank you. Actually, just switch over from the mobile to the system, and there is no problem. Anyway, I assume that you are able to hear me as well as you are able to see the slides also. So let me continue. In the previous class, we are discussing some of the rules and sign conventions that we have used. Okay. I don't know. Am I connected? Okay. Today there is some problems. Okay. So some rules for drawing network diagrams. Let us discuss. Because there are many rules, but we have to discuss one by one. There are a number of rules in connection with the handling of events and activities of a project network, which are given below. Each activity is represented by one and only one arrow in the network. So as you know, we have divided the whole project into various activities now. We have a list of activities. Now, each of these activities for which we have found some or estimated some time, right? And we have also established some kind of dependency, kind of precedence relationships among those activities. So this is the data that is in your hand, and using that, you are going to construct the network diagram. So the first rule says for each of the activities that is there in your list or table, you can draw only one arrow. Right? It's a very simple rule. You cannot have more than one arrow for the same activity. That is the first rule. This implies that no single activity can be represented twice. Right? It's very logical. You can draw only one arrow for one activity. Second one, no two activities can be identified by the same beginning and end event. This is very important and interesting. No two activities can be identified by the same beginning and end event. In such cases, a dummy activity is introduced to resolve the. Look at this figure. Right? At the left side one, that activity A and B seems to be starting from the node 1 and also going to the node 2. This is not permitted, right? This is not permitted in the construction, that you cannot have more than one activity, right? Having the same starting and end events or nodes, right? These circles. If this is the case, practically it may happen. If this is the case, you have to deal that like this. What is that? You have to introduce a dummy activity, right? So as you can see in the right hand side figure, right? Suppose activity A and B is having the same starting and end point, right? But in order to avoid this kind of violation of the rule, you have to introduce one dummy activity. यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हैं एक activity छोटा बनाया गया जिसमें कोई नाम नहीं दिया गया है ना, छोटा सा from 3 to 2, right? From node 3 to 2, you can see that is a dummy activity. Means it is having zero time. It's not consuming any resources, nothing. Just a virtual. It's not a real activity. Just for network construction purpose, just to comply with the rules of the network construction, we have to introduce such a dummy activity, right? So this is the second rule. Next is the arrows depicting various activities are indicative of logical precedence only. Hence, length and bearing of the arrows are of no significance. So what this rule says, in the network diagram, the length of the arrow, right, does not represent any characteristics like the time it takes or the resources it consumes. No. It can be a very short one, but it takes a very long time. Right? So when you are actually constructing the network, sometimes to make it a proper network diagram, you may have to use sometimes a very long arrow, sometimes a very short arrow, right? Just to follow these rules. But the length is not proportional to anything, neither to the time period or any other resources or importance, priority, nothing. So the length of the arrow has nothing to do. This is the second, another rule. The purpose for which this arrow is used is just to represent the relationships, the precedence relationships. Right? The flow of the diagram should be from left to the right. I have already told you. You will start constructing the network diagram from the left and you will move towards the right. Two events are numbered in such a way that the event of higher number can happen only after the, okay. So the event numbers are marked inside the nodes. ठीक है, जो circle है, ये आप square भी use कर सकते हैं. So you have to write the event numbers inside that, right? And you will try that to write the event numbers in an ascending order, right? Starting from the left and move towards the right. Okay. Just like your activities, you are starting from the left and moving towards the right. The event numbering should also start from the left, like starting from 1, 2, 3, 4. You can, in the ascending order, you can go or increase that numbers towards the right. Okay. Arrows should be kept straight and not curved. Okay. Again, this is another rule, and you have to follow it. In the network diagram, sometimes you may be tempted to make the arrows to be curved just to connect something, but it is not permitted. You cannot make a curved arrow. It is not a norm for construction of network diagram. You have to make it a straight arrow. Right? You have to follow it. Avoid arrows which cross each other. Yes, this is also a very important rule, and this also creates some kind of difficulties for you. So when you will exactly construct the network diagram, sometimes you may find that you need to have a crisscrossing of these arrows, right? They overlap, or you have to cross each other. It is not permitted. You have to find the best means so that without crisscrossing these arrows, you are able to construct it. Of course, there are some maybe situations in which there is no other way. You have to crisscross it. If that is the case, then it is permitted, but you have to make a small loop there, just a loop when you are crossing that line, so that you can clearly indicate that this is an arrow and it is just crossing this one. So a small connector type of loop you can use, but it has to be avoided at all the cost. Means if it is really necessary, without which you are not able to construct, then you are permitted. Otherwise, unnecessarily if you are crisscrossing, then it is not considered as the right network construction. Am I audible to you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Right. So I have to check time to time. Okay. Avoid mixing two directions. Vertical and standing arrows may be used if necessary. Okay. What is the meaning of this? That you have to construct the network diagram starting from the left, and the arrows should move towards the right. Right. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि some of the arrows should be given from right to the left. बीच में कभी आपको जरूरत पड़ा तो एक backward भी arrow लगा. It's not permitted. So mixing of two directions is not permitted. Right. So all the arrows looks to be moved from left towards the right. हो सकता है exactly horizontal ना हो, थोड़ा सा incline हो सकता है, but it should be look like moving towards the right. और vertical को भी avoid करना होगा. You cannot use vertical arrows. Vertical, right? Means I hope you got it. It should not be vertical. It should be inclined and towards the right. Use dummy activity freely in rough graph, but final network should have only reluctant dummy. Okay, what is the meaning of this? As I said, there are some activities which are called dummy activities, right? Dummy activities you are using to satisfy the rules for constructing a network, but you should not get a free hand to use as much dummy activities as you like. Because maybe when you will construct, you may feel like if I use a dummy here, then it is satisfying. But unnecessarily, if you are using dummies, then that should be avoided. In the rough in the sense, when you are constructing the network diagram, it may be an iterative process that in the first go you may not construct the final network diagram. You may have to construct it in a rough stage, right? And you can iterate it, you can improve upon it. And finally, when you find that there is no improvement possible, that is the final network diagram. So in the final network diagram that will produce, you make sure that there should not be any dummy activities which are unnecessary, right? That is reluctant to do. Means if it is really needed, then only you give it. So the rule is that you have to keep the dummy activity to the minimum, right? Bare minimum. That is the rule. The network has only one entry point called the start event and one point of emergence called end. Okay, this is also very interesting. What is event? Event is that node, that circle or that square from which one activity or arrow starts, right? So the rule says your whole project or your whole network diagram should look like this, that it should have a single node at the starting point, and it should also have one event or node at the end. There should not be multiple nodes at the end. If there is multiple nodes, that means some events are just like dangling out of the network diagram. It should not look like that. It should look like a closed graph, right? Closed graph. Closed graph means there should not be any activity, I mean event or node which is dangling without a complete loop. Right? So your starting point and your end point, which are nodes or circles or squares, has to be single nodes, right? You cannot have 2 or 3 starting points. Neither you can have more than one end points, right? Is it clear? Okay, you will not respond. No, it's clear. So the network has only, okay, that thing I covered. Angle between the arrows should be as large as possible. Okay. Angle between the arrows means when you are moving towards the right from the left, don't draw the arrows having very small angle between them. Right, means that it should be acute angle, but make it as large as possible so that the network should look like a clear network, and it will be a little bit spread compared to if you are giving very narrow angles between these arrows, then the height of the network diagram will be very small and things will be clumsy. Later on you will face problems, because why it is advised to give bigger angles between the arrows, because in between you have to write some figures, you have to put some boxes and figures which will have subsequently. That's why it is advised that you try to spread the network as far as possible by giving bigger angles, not 90 degrees. If it is 90 degrees, then it will become vertical, but bigger acute angles between the arrows. I hope you got the meaning of this. You are all smart people. Okay. Now the error in drawing networks. What are the possible errors that one may likely to do while drawing the networks for the first time? So if you will know it, you will avoid it in the first time. That's called dangling error, right? So just now I told you there should not be any event or this node to be dangled out of this network, as you can see in this figure, right? You look at the nodes 7 and 8, right? 7 and 8. This seems to be dangling out of this network diagram. Means nothing is going out of event 7 or event 8 or node 7 and node 8. Right? You are not permitted to do like this. It is disconnected. Right? It's disconnected. There must be some activity coming out of this 7 and joining somewhere. Joining somewhere. Then it will become closed. Right? So something I can say it should look like a closed loop, not an open situation like this. But this rule is not applicable to the first and the last event, first and last node. They can remain isolated, means a single one, right? They have to remain single one. But the other nodes which are in between the starting and the end node, they has to be connected, well connected. They cannot dangle like this. Right? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So when we'll actually practice it, when I'll give you some problems and you will practice it, maybe today it's not possible. There are some problems. So otherwise, we could have practiced it today itself. So okay. Now coming to another type of error that you may likely to do, that is called looping error or cyclic error. So look at this figure. What you can make out here. Look at the activities which are connecting the nodes 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Or 10, 11. No, that is okay. 10, 11, 12, 13 is okay. But look at the activities which are connecting 5, 6, 7, 8. Just 5, 7, 8. Look at those nodes. So what you are finding here, that the activities are forming a loop, a cycle, isn't it? 5 to 6 के बीच में activity, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, then from 5 to 8, right? So it looks like they are forming a loop and it's not going anywhere. It has to move towards the right. The activities has to be moved towards right from the left, right? And that is happening in case of, look at this loop. or these nodes 10, 11, 12, 13. There is nothing wrong in this. Right? All these arrows are moving from left towards the right, and they are in a logical sequence. Right? But in case of this 5, 6, 7, 8, this is called a looping error or a cyclic error. Looping error is also known as cyclic error in the network, drawing an endless loop in the net. This is something an endless loop. Right? Drawing an endless loop in a network diagram is known as error of looping. Right? Okay, so these are some of the errors that are likely to happen. Then this is called redundancy error. Right? This is related with your dummy activities. Unnecessarily inserting the dummy activity in a network is called error of redundancy. As I told you already, you are permitted to use dummy activity. Means this dotted line is a dummy activity, but it should not be unnecessary. Right? You will face this problem when I'll give you some examples. The thing is that with practice it will come that how to minimize the dummy activities and how to use the minimum number of dummy activities may come after a bit of practice, and otherwise in the first try you are likely to use many dummy activities. It happens. Okay, now comes an example, and I think it is already 9:50. So if I'll give this example to you, then I may not able to explain it and do it. But you can do one thing, right? I don't know, is it possible or not? If I have some means of taking this problem, you take down this problem, whatever means you have. Either use your pen paper or use your screenshot or anything. You just, please, all of you, please take this problem, right? You take this problem and try using the kind of things I told you. Try to construct this network diagram using the method that I told you. Of course, it is activity in the arc I am asking you. All the activities will be marked as arrows, right? So there is some predecessor, right? And derivation we are not going to use for the construction purpose. It will be used later, but just construct the network diagram, right? All of you, are you able to take this problem? Can you take this problem? Note down this or take screenshot. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So you take down this problem, and I'll tell you in your leisure time, whenever you are getting busy people, in your leisure time, you just try it. Right? All the activities have to be marked as arrows, right? And they should start from a circle and end in a circle. They are called the nodes. Okay, and if required, use the dummy activity and try to make it the minimum number of dummy activities. And whatever rules I just told you, using those rules, you give it a try. In the next class, I'll give you the solution and you can compare with your solution. Right? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything to ask?
No, sir.
ओके तो आप लोग एक ट्राई करेंगे इसको प्रॉब्लम को.
ओके सर.
ओके तो आप लोग इसको ट्राई कीजिए और नेक्स्ट क्लास में इसको डिस्कशन करेंगे दैट व्हाट इज योर सॉल्यूशन and what is the right solution, so that you can make a comparison. And I will advise you, all of you, that there is no alternative. Means you have to do these problems and solve yourself. And otherwise, there is a lot of numerical problems on these things, and if you are not trying yourself, you are definitely going to face some problems, because compared to other modules, this particular portion needs some practice and exercise. So I advise that you give it a try. It will not be difficult, but if you ignore it, maybe it will create some problems for you. So you solve this problem, try to solve it. Even if it is not happening, I'll discuss it how to construct it in the next class. Okay, so let me stop here today.